All right, good evening. We are going to just get rolling here. It's 5:35, November 6, 2023. This is our Public Safety Committee meeting with myself, Nick Allen, and Council President Mike Stefano filling in. Thank you. Ms. Dorsey's on her way. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order then. Item number 2 is comments, suggestions, petitions, by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will go on to item 3A.
I think budget's 4A.
Oh, there's the report first. Yeah, we can do the report. Sorry about that. Thank you.
That's okay. Good evening, Justin McClure, Assistant Fire Chief. Council has the October report for the fire department for 2023. Just some quick items of notes. We are slightly ahead in terms of incident responses. This time last year, we were at 1,270. This year, we're at 1,306. I anticipate that we'll set another record this year. And then October was Fire Prevention Month, and the department did a combined 128 hours of fire department education to various schools and child care centers.
Great, thank you. Any questions about that? Any budget questions? Okay, great. Any public comment or question there? I'm a mess today. Seeing none, we'll move on to 3B, which is the same thing with our police department.
Good evening, James Moorhead, Chief of Police. For the month of October, the police department handled 3,375 calls for service, of which 2,579 of those were in the borough. On this slide here, happy to report that we saw drops in Part 1 and Part 2 crime, Part 1 being our most serious crime. We saw a 34% reduction compared to October of last year, which is always good to see. Our Part 1 crime is listed above there if you have any questions, and the next slide will be our Part 2 crime. Again, nothing crazy to report. I'd like to thank all of the officers and all of our partners in emergency services for a safe chili cook-off back on October 8th. Good evening, Ms. Dorsey. And a tremendous Halloween event parade that took place on October 25th. Both were successful, safe. Everybody had a great time. Be remiss if I didn't mention Councilman Flynn for his support for the First Responders Mass at St. Agnes earlier in the month of October as well. And coming up this week, I'd like to give a shout out to all of our veterans for Veterans Day. I appreciate all their service and sacrifices, and I'll take any questions you might have tonight.
Do you have a percentage of the force that is, do you know, are veterans? Do you know how many?
Yeah, I can give you a rough number. I think it's about 5 of the 44.
Okay. Just wondering, I know that we promote veterans and give them like what's the stars, points, or scores for their interview process. So that's great.
Yeah. You think I would know that number? I should have that one. But good question. Anything else good? All right. Thank you.
I guess it doesn't matter, but 3C is our Good Fellowship report.
Good evening, everybody. Lenny Brown, Assistant Chief from Good Fellowship. Chief Brogan sends his regards from Florida. He'll be returning here shortly. So you guys have our borough report for the month of October. Generally, we see a higher call volume in October with the cold weather starting to kick in, flu cases, COVID, RSV season starting to come back. So 696 total calls for the month of October for all of Good Fellowship. Like I said, you see the breakdown of 217 here in the borough. Other than, like I said, the increase of call volume that we saw, all of our numbers stay really in line with what we expect for the month of October and overall for everything. Like I said, you see our call volume by hour. 1 o'clock in the morning is busy in the borough. Shocking. So like I said, we have those things. And one of the things that we do, and Chaz had a couple points that he wanted to point out here during the report, is that the call volume by hour page that we show you guys with that bar graph there, that's not just cool data that we like to show and kind of see like when we are busy. We use that to help to navigate our staffing and what we do. So traditionally Sunday through Wednesday, between the hours of like midnight and 8 a.m., we see that there's a significant call volume drop for us. So we tend to back off our staffing some of that. So that way we're using the funds obviously a little bit more appropriately as we go through. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we really go into that full staffing, following the data and what we're seeing there. So overall, like I said, October is pretty standard for us. We tend to see that larger call volume. The last thing that Chief Brogan wanted to point out was we're working through our 2024 draft budget. We're hoping to have that finalized by the end of the month. And then obviously any municipalities that would like to see that, we're happy to share that as we work our way through it. So like I said, the other thing that with our increased call volume is we want to tip our caps to the hospitals around us, so mainly Paoli and Chester County Hospital. With that increased call volume, that's not just for us, that's across the board for the entire county, the entire EMS industry. So they're seeing increased call volumes. And thankfully, we would anticipate our wait times in the ER when we get there, when we actually transfer care of our patients, to go up. And due to the staffing increases, the different logistics that the hospitals have done internally for them, those numbers have stayed fairly consistent and low. So they're getting the ambulances that pull up. They're thankfully getting the patients' rooms or finding them space so that they can get the ambulances turned around and back on the street to answer the next emergency call. So overall, pretty happy with the numbers for October, despite our call increases. So any questions for the fellowship?
No, no questions.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Any public comment or question tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 3D, which is a discussion about school bus stop locations with intersections versus mid-block, especially with the current issue at South Franklin Street and East Rosedale.
Yeah, I'll start this off, Nick, if that's okay. So I asked for this to be put on the agenda, and just quickest backstory I can give. My son's in kindergarten now, so I finally firsthand see the bus stops, and the bus stop in particular that is ours is on South Franklin Street at the intersection of South Franklin in East Rosedale. And the issue we're seeing is that when the bus comes south on Franklin Street, stops at the intersection, cars coming east on Rosedale don't see the bus lights in time. They make the curve, because it's essentially a curve, they don't have a stop sign, and then they fly right through it, and it happens a lot. So we talked to some of the parents of the other bus stop, and they said this has been an ongoing issue. We see it firsthand. So my wife took she asked the police department to do a traffic study. I know Sergeant Malicki was very helpful with that. He looked at it, and he noticed that, yes, this is a problem. There's not enough time to see the lights. And then through the discussion with Sergeant Malicki, I found that there are other stops that this is an issue with. So it wasn't just this one bus stop. So after getting that information, and what the police department and Sergeant Malicki can talk to this, recommend is not having bus stops at intersections, but having them mid-block, which will allow enough time for cars opposing traffic to see the lights and stop in time. So when I reached out to the school district, a woman from the transportation department who responded back said that it is a school board policy that bus stops have to be at intersections. So I found that interesting that the police department has a recommendation and then the school district is saying the opposite. And so I feel like there is a chance here for some kind of discussion and a way to maybe revisit this by the school district. So the reason I put this or asked for this to be discussed is to see if we can come with some consensus between Borough Council and our police department, and maybe have a unified front, and then approach the school district with this information and see if they're at least willing to open it up as a discussion. So that's kind of the backstory that I give you. Sergeant Malicki, do you want to come up and give any more information about this? Yeah, and thank you in advance for all this work you've done for this stuff.
No problem. Sergeant Malicki, Westchester Police. I'm assigned to our traffic safety unit, as you mentioned. You brought this issue to my attention, which we studied, as you previously just mentioned. And this issue is not something that is just solely to that intersection. It's common at a lot of intersections in Westchester Borough. We have 222 some intersections, and we have many more bus stops that occur throughout the borough. Many of them are at controlled intersections. When you look at how a bus functions, we have amber and red lights to the front of the bus that give warning that that bus is about to stop, amber lights signaling that it's about to stop. red lights and a stop arm that are actuated. The buses are required to activate those lights. The amber lights start to go on at about 300 feet to at a minimum of 150 feet to signal that that bus is going to start stop. But if you look at an intersection and you're approaching from a 90-degree angle, you have no warning that that bus is going to be stopping. For instance, if we were to be out on Penn Street, which is an intersection with a stop sign, and if you were to be offloading or loading students on Penn Street at that intersection, the cars on Gay Street would have no warning of that a bus is offloading there. When I looked on Westchester Area School District's guidelines here, I see nothing about intersections. So I'm not sure what they're necessarily referring to. So I started to try to research best practices over the nation to try to find like, hey, what do we see? And, you know, I see a lot of it that's referred to, you know, best practices, this, that, but I'm not seeing hard and fast rules. So I kind of just go back to what's common sense. If we move the bus stop just slightly off the intersection, we're giving due warning to that driver. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to make this more complicated for the school district or anything like that. All I'm trying to do is just give due warning to those drivers that when they're coming around a corner or they're at that intersection, that school bus is there and now we're protected. Because one of the further problems that we're having at some of these other intersections is drivers just don't understand. They're pulling up to the intersection and maybe they're making the right away from the school bus. And they think, well, I'm not meeting or overtaking that school bus, so I'm not committing that violation. So they believe that they're not doing that. Technically, when you read PennDOT's regulations, they are committing that violation, which gets parents very upset. And we've had full-blown fights at some of our bus stops because parents become incensed with some of the things that have happened. So these school buses become a very tumultuous issue because their parents, rightfully so, are worried about the safety of their children. So the way I look at it, a simple thing to do when you have a big yellow school bus, especially on some of these tight borough streets, you move it slightly off that intersection, and now we've negated, for the most part, even being able to have a car be able to pass that school bus. I think it negates a lot of these problems of having that car go past that school bus, thus making a much safer environment for those kids. That would be my recommendation for resolving this issue. Any questions that I could field for you?
No, I appreciate that, and the way you described it still makes sense to me. And like you said, we're not getting into the weeds of this. It's an easy fix. And when I presented to the school board or to the school district, I was very clear that I've had plenty, being a chair of the public safety in previous years, I've had plenty of times where people have asked for stop signs and things where you have to go through PennDOT and get this approval. And this is not that. It's literally just stop 200 feet or 100 feet off the intersection and we could solve the problem. So I feel like that's a very common sense way to go about it and make a change. So the fact that you looked in their policy and it's not written there makes me a little concerned that that's the reply I got. So that makes me also encouraged that we could make an easy fix. But
I wonder if there's value in, like maybe getting together with West Goshen traffic and like having a united front and making a recommendation to the school district. But I live on a corner where there's a bus stop, and at least once a week, if not more, the bus driver is blowing the horn because someone's not stopping for elementary aged kids. And I mean, we've had kids hit this year and it's only November. Yeah, I would be in support of this.
yeah, good. Yeah, and the other reason it sounded like from the woman who responded back was that it allows students to cross the intersection safely to get to the bus stop. But at least at my bus stop, I know for a fact, nobody does that. They just cross before and then they wait at the actual side of the street where the bus comes. So that doesn't really, it's not a good reason from my opinion. So, so hearing this, I think this would be something that I'm happy to be the one to go to the district and do that. But I think something I hadn't thought about talking to West Goshen and getting like a unified front as well.
Departments that are impacted by Westchester Area School District, I would hit them up too. It's power in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if council wants to go in this direction by making a recommendation next week
We do have the Westchester Area Council of Government meets on the 7th, whatever the Thursday is, next week. And we
Okay.
can bring that up with them and at least get the word out.
I think that'd be great. Yeah. 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 But what I would ask if we could have a recommendation from this committee to ask council to just, you know, if it would be in the form, Mr. Metric, of like a resolution or something, or how would we, is that would sound right? Okay. Okay. That would be, I would love that if that was, okay. Okay. I appreciate all the hard
Not a
work. you've been
problem.
doing.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Any other public comments there on that item? Okay, great. Seeing none, we can move on to our action items. So 4A is to approve the Westchester Fire Department Regional Fire Services Agreement.
So this is the legal part of the document. We've been talking a lot about the budget, capital planning in the last couple of months. I was hoping to get this to you a month sooner, but we had one of our partners, West Goshen Township, was interested in instituting a clause in the agreement that would allow for voluntary termination of the agreement by the townships. And myself and the borough manager, since we both have the same, and the township manager, since we both have the same solicitor, we worked out some terms that made sense, and I'm bringing those to you today. Essentially, if a member wanted to terminate the agreement, they'd have to do so in a very narrow window of time and resolve that agreement or renegotiation within 90 days. Otherwise, they are bound by the agreement in the following year, because I didn't want that instance to upset budget planning for the future for the borough or any other members. That's reflected in the draft agreement you see before you. There aren't any other changes to the legal functioning of the agreement. We talked a lot about numbers and how the budget was being affected by things like capital planning and mostly by better data we had for reallocating the expenses. And that really did drive up the borough's cost share of the overall costs of the Westchester Fire Department. The other thing that's different in this 5-year agreement is that the members all agreed that it made sense to have small increases year over year of around 3% rather than have a flat rate for 5 years and then a big step up when you go into your new contract. The other issue we tried to resolve in this contract agreement, which we went over before, is that it's a very light 5 years for capital investment. So rather than take the easy way out and just pay the absolutely small amount of money, relatively small amount of money compared to other 5-year phases of the contract, we agreed that it made sense in the budget to make down payments on future capital costs and to keep those rates somewhat reasonable for all the members. So that was the money that we went over before. Mainly, I'm sharing this agreement with you and to point out that we do have one change in it over the prior agreement.
Any questions or concerns? That? Yeah, I think I'm good to go on that. Any public comment? We happy to call this a 3-0 recommendation? Cool. Great, sounds good. Thanks again for flattening out our expenses. I do really appreciate that. Item 4B is to approve the nomination of the Westchester Fire Chief.
Good evening again, Justin McClure, Assistant Fire Chief. Every 3 years, Borough Council appoints a new fire chief. The fire chief, a member of one of the borough's 3 fire companies, must have attained 25 years of age, be a citizen of the United States, have been an active member of the fire department for 3 years, held the position of captain or assistant chief for a 1-year term, and have attended training courses in firefighting, arson, and leadership. The members of the Westchester Fire Department are pleased to unanimously recommend that Assistant Chief Mark Scanlon be appointed by council as the next fire chief of the Westchester Fire Department. Mark has served in the borough's fire department since 2005, and since that time has progressed through the ranks, starting as a firefighter, then a lieutenant, captain, and currently as assistant chief, a position he's held for the last 8 years. Mark exceeds all the requirements set forth by the borough, the fire department, and on numerous occasions has demonstrated his ability to serve as a fire ground commander. The fire chief, who like the rest of the department's members is 100% volunteer, is not a position of ease. It requires patience, persistence, sacrifice, and steadfast commitment. It's not a job, but a lifestyle. The Borough of Westchester and its surrounding communities is fortunate to have Assistant Chief Scanlon be the candidate for such a vital task. And as an attachment, you have the signatures from the Fire Department Chief Selection Committee, which was made up of operational administrative members of the fire department, as well as 2 past fire chiefs.
Yeah, thanks so
Any
much.
questions?
Congratulations. This is very exciting.
This is Mark, by the way.
Yeah.
Congrats, Mark.
I figured.
Yeah,
Any
great.
questions or concerns there?
No.
Congratulations.
Thanks for all you do. Really, really appreciate it. Any public comment before we move on? We'll call that a 3-0 recommendation. And
I do
then,
hope we have an opportunity in maybe next month's meeting just to recognize the great work that Fire Chief Pelna has done. I've been in local government now at the local level now 10 years, and Steve is an exceptional leader, a great organizer, patient person, articulate, smart, and you have big shoes to fill. And I just hope we get a chance to recognize Steve and if you haven't picked up on it, I personally really have enjoyed working with him the last 3 years.
yeah, that's great to hear. I would definitely love to do that for sure.
I obviously wasn't in attendance, so you can make it 2 if you both are.
No questions. Approved.
At 5:57. Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Sure. Come on down.
I'd say it started at 6. How you guys doing tonight? My name is Ian Wybransky. We're here seeking a permit to replace and repair our windows of our building. We've been denied by HARB on multiple occasions.
Next committee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This one,
You were
it
correct.
does start at 6.
You were correct
Yeah.
at 6, yes.